The sun stood high above the endless sand, turning the world into a mirror of heat and silence. The desert stretched in every direction, flat and golden with dunes rising like frozen waves. In the middle of that quiet world stood a small research camp made of silver tents and tall antennas that shimmered under the light. The camp was silent except for the steady hum of machines and the faint whir of cooling fans trying to keep the equipment alive under the burning sky. Mira sat inside the main tent, her eyes fixed on the screen in front of her. She had short dark hair that kept falling over her face and her clothes were covered with dust. Her computer showed long lines of data scrolling endlessly, waves and peaks of strange numbers. She leaned closer, pressing a few keys, then froze when she noticed something new. A steady rhythm had appeared in the signal, not random noise but a pulse. It came every 7 seconds, soft and calm, like a heartbeat buried deep beneath the sand. She turned her head toward Thomas, who was sitting at another table repairing a small drone. He was older than her and usually quiet, focused on his work. She called out to him in a calm but curious voice. "Thomas, can you check this reading? I think the signal changed." He put down his tools and walked over. When he looked at her screen, his eyebrows lifted slightly. The pattern was too regular to be natural. The lines rose and fell like breathing, and even the spaces between the pulses were exact. "That looks artificial," Thomas said after a moment. "It is not from our instruments?" "No," Mira answered. "I already checked. It is coming from below us." Rhea, who had been outside taking temperature readings, stepped into the tent, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Did you find something again?" she asked with a tired smile. Mira nodded and pointed at the screen. "There is a signal under the ground. It repeats the same way every time." Rhea leaned forward. "Maybe it is an echo from the old mining sensors." Mira shook her head. "It is too deep for that. The return delay shows it is coming from at least 200 meters below the surface." Bo entered the tent last. He was tall, with sunburned skin and a friendly face that often carried a half smile. He held a bottle of water in one hand and a small sensor unit in the other. "What did I miss?" he asked. Thomas looked up from the screen. "We may have found something under the desert. Something that wants to be heard." Bo laughed softly. "Then I guess we start digging." But it was not that simple. The sand in this region was thick and heavy, and their machines were small. It took them 2 days to prepare the equipment for a focused scan. During that time, Mira kept studying the signal. Every night after the heat faded, she would sit outside the tent and watch the stars. They seemed sharper here than anywhere else, as if the desert itself cleared the air. The signal always grew stronger when the stars appeared, as though it responded to the night sky. On the 3rd morning, the team gathered around the main scanner. It was a tall metal rod fixed to the ground with a round dish at the top. Rhea adjusted the controls while Thomas watched the readings on his tablet. Mira held her breath when the first image appeared. Beneath the sand, the screen showed something large and circular stretching nearly 50 meters wide. It reflected their scans like polished metal. "It looks like a dome," Rhea whispered. Bo frowned. "No old structure is that perfect." "It is too smooth." Mira touched the edge of the screen. The outline of the shape was bright and steady. "Whatever it is," she said, "it has been waiting a long time." That evening they began to dig. The first few meters were easy, just dry sand sliding away with every movement. But as they went deeper, the sand changed color from gold to pale white and finally to a faint shade of silver. The air grew cooler and the signal became stronger until they could feel a gentle vibration under their feet. It was not a tremor but a hum, like the faint sound of distant music. Mira could not stop thinking about it. She recorded every sound, every change in temperature and every pattern from the scanners. The chamber, whatever it was, seemed to breathe. The pulses of energy came in waves that matched her own heartbeat. When she noticed that, she felt a strange connection, like the desert was alive and listening. On the 5th day, the tip of their digging machine hit something solid. The sound echoed through the shaft. Everyone stopped working. They looked at one another, realizing this was the moment they had been waiting for. Thomas slowly cleared the last layer of sand until a smooth golden surface appeared. It was not the dull yellow of common metal, but a rich living gold that seemed to shine with its own light. When the sun touched it, the reflection danced like fire under water. Bo reached out but stopped himself. Mira placed a small sensor against the surface. The readings were strange. Not metal, not stone, not any known compound. It carried traces of energy that matched the same pulse from the signal. "It is alive in some way," Mira said softly. Rhea crouched beside her. Alive? Not in a biological sense, Mira explained. But it reacts. It listens. That night the team gathered around the fire near the edge of the camp. The desert was cold now, and the wind carried a soft sound like whispers across the dunes. The stars filled the sky in endless clusters. Bo handed out warm drinks while Thomas checked their energy supply. Rhea sat quietly, staring at the horizon where the sand met the night. Mira broke the silence. Do you think it is something built by the ancients? Maybe a forgotten culture? Thomas shook his head. No culture on Earth could have built that kind of structure under this much sand without leaving traces. Then what is it? Bo asked. Mira looked at the stars again. Maybe it is not from here. The others did not answer. The idea felt too big to speak about. For a long time they sat without talking, just listening to the wind move across the dunes. The signal kept pulsing steady and calm, like a voice speaking from the heart of the world. The next morning, Mira woke before sunrise. The desert was gray and silent. She walked alone to the edge of the dig site. The golden surface below had gathered dew during the night, and the small drops shimmered like stars. She touched the surface gently with her gloved hand. For a moment the pulse changed, matching the rhythm of her breath. She pulled back, surprised. When the others joined her, she explained what happened. Thomas tested it again, pressing a metal probe against the surface. The signal responded once more, shifting its tone higher, then lower, like a melody adjusting to a listener. It is aware of us, he said in a calm voice. It can hear us. The day passed in careful study. The more they worked, the clearer it became that the chamber beneath was vast. Their instruments could not see its full depth. The golden dome appeared to be just the roof of a much larger structure. At night, when the stars rose again, Mira noticed something new. The reflections on the golden surface changed with the sky. Each star above had a faint matching point below, as if the surface mirrored the heavens perfectly. Rhea pointed at it. Look, it is copying the sky. Bo smiled in quiet wonder. Or maybe the sky is copying it. They stayed awake until midnight watching the strange reflection. When a meteor passed above, a flash of light also moved across the golden surface below. It was then that Mira understood what made the place so unique. The chamber did not just sit under the desert. It was connected to the stars in some hidden way. Each pulse of energy matched the rhythm of the night, as if the desert and the universe shared the same heartbeat. Before dawn, Mira recorded her thoughts in her journal. Her handwriting was careful and neat. We found something that listens. It is not metal or stone, but a mirror of light. It reacts to our presence and to the stars. It feels old yet alive. I think it has been waiting for someone to find it again. When the first light of morning touched the horizon, the golden surface glowed once more, brighter than before. The reflection spread across the sand like a soft wave of sunlight. The team stood in silence, watching as the chamber seemed to breathe with the rising sun. None of them spoke. There were no words for what they felt. The signal continued its steady pulse beneath their feet, calm and eternal, as if the heart of the desert itself had awakened. And though Mira did not know it yet, this was only the beginning. The chamber had opened its eyes and the universe was about to listen back. The desert was quiet when the morning sun rose. A soft wind moved across the dunes, carrying the scent of dust and heat. The camp looked peaceful from a distance, but inside the dig site, Mira and her team were already awake and busy. The signal beneath the sand had not stopped through the night. It pulsed like a slow rhythm, deep and calm. Each beat felt like the whisper of something ancient and alive. Mira stood at the edge of the pit, looking down at the smooth, golden surface. The light of the sun turned it into a river of fire. She could not believe how perfect it looked. No crack, no sign of wear, only endless shine. It reflected everything above it, the sky, the sand, even her own face when she leaned forward. It was like looking into a dream made of light. Thomas joined her with his tablet in hand. The scanners show a hollow space below, he said. We are standing above a dome, and inside there is open air. Or something close to it. Open air? Mira asked, surprised. After all these years underground? Thomas nodded slowly. If the readings are right, the atmosphere inside is stable. That means the structure is sealed from every side. Whatever built this, they knew how to protect it. Bo climbed up from the lower level, carrying a set of tools. His clothes were covered in dust and his face shone with excitement. "The cutting drill is ready," he said. "We can open a small path through the top layer. Just enough to look inside." Mira looked back at the golden surface. Part of her wanted to stop. It felt wrong to disturb something so perfect, something that might have waited thousands of years. But her curiosity was stronger. They had come too far to turn back now. "Do it carefully," she said at last. "No damage beyond what we need." The work began slowly. The drill used a thin beam of heat and vibration to melt a small circle in the golden layer. When the first spark touched the surface, the metal responded with a soft tone like a bell. The sound spread through the sand, gentle but clear. Mira stepped closer, her heart racing. The tone did not fade but continued to echo as if the chamber was singing to them. Rhea placed her hand on the surface near the drill. "It feels warm," she said softly. "Almost like it knows we are here." After several hours, a round opening appeared, just large enough for one person to pass through. A faint light rose from within, not bright but golden and soft, like the last glow of the sun after it sets. Mira leaned over the hole and looked down. What she saw took her breath away. Below her stretched a vast hall so wide and high that her lamp could not reach the far walls. The light seemed to come from the chamber itself, shining from the walls and floor. Every surface was covered in the same golden material, but it was not smooth. It was filled with fine patterns, circles, lines, and shapes that shimmered as if alive. It looked like a map made of light. "We found it," Thomas whispered. "The source of the signal." Bo set up a safety harness and lowered a small camera into the hole. The images appeared on their screen inside the tent. The chamber was beautiful beyond anything they had imagined. In the center of the floor floated a round object, silver and bright, hanging in the air without support. It turned slowly, showing reflections that shifted with every angle. Around it were tall pillars that looked like trees made of light, their branches spreading toward the ceiling and meeting in glowing patterns that resembled stars. Mira stared at the screen. "It looks like the night sky," she said. "The chamber itself is a reflection of the universe." Thomas nodded. "We are going in." The descent was careful and slow. Mira went first, followed by Rhea, Thomas, and Bo. The air inside was cool and light, carrying a faint smell of metal and dust. Their footsteps made no sound on the floor. It felt like stepping into another world, one untouched by time. The walls glowed gently around them. When they moved, the light changed color, gold to white, white to soft blue, as if the chamber was aware of their presence. Mira felt a calm energy filling the space, not loud, not fearful, but welcoming. She raised her hand and watched the reflection ripple across the wall like water. "It is reacting to light," Thomas said, examining the readings, "or maybe to thought. Every change we make, it reflects." They walked toward the floating sphere in the center. It was about the size of a large globe, smooth as glass but with a surface that seemed alive. Tiny lights moved within it, forming lines and spirals that shifted every second. When Mira stood in front of it, she saw her reflection, but not exactly as she was. Behind her image were faint stars, moving in patterns that matched the real night sky above the desert. Bo reached out slowly. His fingers stopped just short of the surface. "It feels like air, but I can sense something." "A field or a pressure?" Mira nodded. "It is energy, the source of the signal. Every pulse comes from this sphere." They set up their instruments around it. Rhea placed a small sensor near the base of the floating sphere and turned it on. The screen filled with patterns, not random lines, but repeating symbols. Each pulse created a wave that carried shapes like letters. Mira leaned close, tracing one of the patterns with her finger. "These symbols," she said, "they look like constellations. Each one is shaped like a group of stars." Thomas compared them to his database. "You are right. But there are some we have never seen. They do not exist in any known map of our galaxy." The chamber remained silent except for the soft hum that filled the air. Then, without warning, the sphere brightened. The golden walls began to shimmer. The reflections joined together, forming a moving pattern that spread across the room. It was like standing inside a sea of light. The shapes on the walls shifted into images, planets, suns, and distant galaxies all moving as if alive. Rhea gasped. "It is showing us the universe." Mira watched speechless. The images moved faster, showing the birth of stars, the growth of worlds, and the rise of civilizations. Then the vision slowed, showing Earth. There were oceans, clouds, and land glowing under sunlight. It was so real that Mira felt she could step forward and touch it. The image changed again, showing people building, learning, reaching for the stars. It was not only a mirror of space, but a record of time. Thomas whispered, "This chamber is a memory." Bo looked around in awe. "Then it has been recording everything. It remembers the universe." The light faded slowly until only the gentle golden glow remained. The sphere returned to its calm rotation. Mira felt both small and proud at the same time. The chamber had shown them that humanity was part of something far greater, a story written across endless stars. They spent hours studying the patterns. Each wall told a different part of the universe's journey. Some symbols matched ancient marks found on Earth in forgotten temples and stones. It was as if the same hand that built this chamber had once visited their world. Rhea ran her hand along one wall. "Maybe this is where they came from," she said. Whoever they were, Mira looked at her. Or maybe this is where they wanted to be remembered. The air in the chamber grew warmer. The sphere pulsed softly again, not as a signal, but as a rhythm that matched their movement. Thomas noticed it first. "It is responding to us. Every time we speak or move, it changes slightly." Mira looked up at the ceiling. The light patterns there shifted with each sound, forming new shapes. One of them began to resemble a spiral galaxy. At its edge, she could see a faint golden mark. When she zoomed in with her tablet, she realized what it showed. A small point of light, placed exactly where Earth's solar system would be. "It is adding us to the reflection," she said in a quiet voice. "It is recording humanity." They stood in silence, watching the golden point shimmer among the stars. The feeling was beyond words. It was as if the universe had opened its arms to welcome them. After some time, they climbed back to the surface. The night had fallen, and the sky above the desert was filled with stars. Mira looked up and then back down at the sand covering the chamber. She knew that what they had found was not just a relic or a machine. It was a bridge between light and life, a message from something greater. As they returned to the camp, the pulse from below continued, steady and calm. The golden chamber was no longer silent. It had awakened, and its story was only beginning to unfold. The desert night was silent except for the soft hum rising from below the sand. The chamber had fallen quiet again after the visions of light and stars, but Mira could still feel the energy beneath her feet. It was not gone, only resting like a deep breath held between worlds. She stood outside the tent watching the horizon. The stars looked brighter than usual, spread across the sky like scattered gold. She thought of the chamber's ceiling, the way it had mirrored the same stars with such perfection. It was as if the universe above and the one below were reflections of each other, bound by light. Inside the tent, Thomas and Rhea worked over the data screens, studying the images captured from the walls. Bo sat nearby repairing a cracked sensor. Their camp light glowed softly, casting warm colors over their tired faces. Rhea looked up from the screen. "The symbols we saw are repeating," she said. "The walls record the same shapes again and again, but sometimes they change, as if they are telling a story." Thomas turned his tablet around so Mira could see. "Look at this section," he said. "When we entered the chamber, the symbols rearranged. I compared the pattern to ancient carvings found in old desert ruins. Some of these shapes match. It means there is a link between this place and human history." Mira leaned over the screen. The symbols were made of circles, lines, and spirals. They looked simple, yet each one seemed to hold meaning. "You think whoever built this was here before us," she said. "Maybe not before humans," Thomas replied. "But perhaps they visited long ago. Maybe they shared knowledge that became myths or stories." Bo looked up from his work. "So you are saying this could be connected to the ones the old tales called the Sky Builders?" Rhea smiled faintly. "That name fits better than anything else." Mira stayed silent for a moment. Then she said, "If they built this chamber, they left it for someone to find. Maybe for us." The thought filled the tent with quiet wonder. They were not explorers uncovering random ruins. They were part of a much larger message written across time. The golden chamber was not only a mirror of the stars, but a bridge between those who had come before and those who had just arrived. The next morning, they returned to the chamber with fresh supplies and new focus. The air inside was still and cool, carrying the faint scent of metal and sand. When Mira stepped in, the walls brightened as if welcoming them back. The light flowed slowly across the surface like waves of gentle fire. Thomas set up a small holographic projector. It displayed the pattern of symbols they had recorded the previous night. "We can test how the chamber reacts when we project the same symbols," he said. "If the makers designed this to communicate, maybe it will answer." Rhea adjusted the settings and turned on the projector. A thin beam of light painted the symbols across the chamber floor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sphere at the center glowed brighter. The air vibrated softly and a low tone filled the space. The same symbols appeared on the walls, matching those from the projector. But new ones began to appear too, forming circles around the original shapes. It was as if the chamber was responding. Bo stepped closer, eyes wide. "It understands what we show it." Mira felt a rush of excitement. "Then it can speak." Not with words, but with light. The patterns changed again. The walls displayed moving images. They showed vast cities made of crystal towers that reached above the clouds, floating platforms covered with light, and ships sailing through the darkness between stars. Beings walked among them, tall and graceful, their faces hidden by glowing veils. They worked together, building and shaping the light itself. It was a world of calm creation, not war or chaos, Rhea whispered. "These must be the makers." The images continued. The makers gathered around a sphere like the one before them. They placed their hands above it and lines of light spread outward across the stars. The scene shifted, showing planets filled with new life. Some worlds had oceans, some had forests, some had golden deserts like this one. It was as if the makers had planted the seeds of creation wherever they went. Mira felt her chest tighten with wonder. "They built worlds," she said. "They shared their light with others." The next image showed the makers looking toward the stars. A great chamber appeared, shining like the one beneath their feet. The vision showed its walls, the floating sphere, and the golden patterns that matched their own. Then the image slowly faded, replaced by symbols that glowed softly before vanishing. Thomas checked his readings. The pulse changed. "It is sending new data upward." "Maybe to the sky," Rhea nodded. "The chamber is active again." Mira looked around. They wanted to preserve memory. This is a record of what they were. The chamber keeps their story alive. They spent the rest of the day studying the patterns. Each new wave of light revealed more about the maker's world. The chamber seemed to respond to emotion as much as action. When they spoke with calm voices, the light grew brighter. When they grew too excited or loud, it dimmed as if it preferred peace. Bo laughed softly. "It likes quiet minds." By late afternoon, they discovered something new. One section of the wall showed a map made of stars. Mira traced her hand across it. Each point of light pulsed faintly when she touched it. Near the center of the map was a golden spiral, brighter than the rest. Rhea compared it to their charts. "That is our galaxy," she said. "The Milky Way." Thomas pointed to one small light near the edge of the spiral. "That could be our sun." When Mira touched that point, the chamber reacted again. The walls filled with soft golden color, and the sphere began to hum with a gentle rhythm. Then, slowly, images appeared, not of the makers, but of Earth. They saw mountains, rivers, forests, and people. It was as if the chamber had learned from them and now reflected their story too. Bo stepped back in awe. "It is recording us," Rhea smiled. "We are becoming part of its memory." Mira watched as the images of Earth blended with the stars. The chamber was expanding its reflection, adding humanity to the great story of the universe. The makers had built a mirror not only for themselves but for anyone who would come after. It was not just their story anymore. It was everyone's. When evening came, they climbed back to the surface. The wind was cool, carrying a faint shimmer of gold dust that sparkled in the fading light. The team sat together outside their tents, watching the sky turn from blue to deep purple. The stars appeared one by one until the whole sky was filled again. Thomas spoke first. "If the makers shared their memory with us, it means they trusted someone would continue their story." Mira nodded. "Maybe they believed that every new world would add its own light to the reflection." Bo leaned back, smiling softly. "It makes you feel small but also proud." "We are part of something endless," Rhea looked up. "Do you think there are more chambers like this on other worlds?" "Maybe," Mira said. "Each one waiting to be found. Each one reflecting another piece of the universe." The desert was silent again, but it was no longer empty. They could feel the presence of the chamber below, its gentle pulse beating in harmony with the stars. It was not a machine but a living memory, a bridge between ages. Mira thought of the makers, beings who had given their knowledge not to rule but to share. leaving behind beauty instead of power. Later that night, as the others rested, Mira walked alone to the edge of the dig site. She stood above the golden surface now covered lightly with sand. The pulse beneath her feet was steady and calm. She placed her hand over her heart and closed her eyes. For a brief moment she felt the same rhythm, her heartbeat and the chamber's pulse moving as one. When she opened her eyes, she looked up at the stars. They shone with the same golden glow she had seen below. She whispered softly, not expecting an answer, but the wind carried her voice away like a small piece of the universe joining the night. The chamber listened. Deep beneath the sand, the sphere glowed faintly once more. It remembered the touch, the sound, the warmth of new visitors who had learned to listen. The reflection of humanity now lived within its light, side by side with the memories of the makers. And far above, among the stars, a faint golden shimmer appeared where none had been before, a new reflection joining the endless map of creation. The story of the makers continued, carried now by those who walked beneath the same stars they once watched. The desert was quiet after sunset. The air was cool, and the wind moved softly over the sand, leaving long, smooth lines behind. Above the camp, the sky spread wide and endless, filled with stars that seemed close enough to touch. Mira stood outside the tent looking up. She could still feel the gentle hum of the chamber beneath her feet. It was steady and calm, like the slow rhythm of a heartbeat that had no beginning and no end. Inside the tent, Thomas worked on his screen. Streams of data ran down as he compared the chamber's energy readings from the past few days. Rhea sat near him, marking notes in her journal. Bo was checking the equipment, making sure the drills, lights, and scanners were ready for another descent. The team had spent several nights trying to understand what the chamber was doing. Each time they entered it, the walls changed slightly, as if learning more about them. Mira came back inside and spoke in a calm tone. The stars look brighter tonight. The signal is matching their rhythm again. Thomas nodded without looking up. Yes, the pulse aligns with the light of the brightest stars. It's as if the chamber is listening to the sky. Rhea turned toward Mira. What if it's not just listening? What if it's answering something we cannot hear? Mira thought for a moment. You mean there could be another signal coming from above? Maybe, Rhea said. If this chamber was built to speak to the stars, maybe it has been waiting for a reply. The idea filled the tent with silence. They all knew the chamber was ancient, built by the makers long before humans had walked the desert. But if Rhea was right, then the chamber was part of a larger network, something that reached beyond Earth itself. The next morning, the team returned to the golden chamber. As they stepped inside, the air felt lighter than before. The glow from the walls was soft and welcoming, filling the room with a warmth that eased their tiredness. The sphere in the center was still floating, spinning slowly in the air. Its surface shimmered with tiny lights that shifted like stars reflected on water. Tomas placed a scanner on the floor and watched the readings. The pulse is stronger today, he said. And look, it changes when the sunlight outside shifts. The chamber responds to the sun and the stars. Mira looked at the sphere. It's alive in its own way. It feels what the universe feels. Bo smiled as he adjusted the camera. Maybe it's time we show it something new. They set up a projector and aimed it toward the sphere. Mira connected her tablet and played a sequence of images, photographs of Earth taken from space. The blue oceans, the green forests, and the clouds all moved across the screen. The light filled the chamber, painting the golden walls with the color of home. The sphere reacted instantly. It brightened until the air itself seemed to glow. The images of Earth appeared again on its surface, but now they were alive, spinning slowly like a miniature planet. Then, small lines of light reached outward from it, connecting with the patterns on the walls. The chamber began to hum in a deeper tone. The sound was not loud but powerful, like the voice of a mountain speaking through the wind. Rhea whispered, "It's answering us." The golden walls shimmered brighter, and new shapes appeared across them, not of the makers this time, but of the stars above the desert. Mira recognized them as constellations. They changed and shifted, forming paths between one star and another. The chamber was mapping something, drawing a trail through the universe. Tomas studied the readings. It's showing coordinates, but they don't match any of our known maps. Rhea leaned closer. Maybe it's showing where the other chambers are. The thought made everyone stop. If more chambers existed, it meant the makers had left many reflections across the stars, each one waiting to wake again. The map on the wall expanded, showing not just one line but dozens, spreading like golden threads that reached far beyond their galaxy. Mira's heart raced. "It's connecting to something," she said. "Maybe the other chambers are answering." The hum grew deeper and beams of light began to rise from the sphere, climbing upward through the air. They passed through the ceiling and vanished into the sand above. The ground trembled slightly, not in a violent way, but as if the earth itself was breathing. Outside, the desert filled with light. Thin golden lines spread across the dunes, glowing under the night sky. Bo ran toward the entrance and looked out. "You need to see this," he called. The others followed. The desert was glowing. From above, it would have looked like a vast circle of light drawn into the sand. The golden beams reached upward, connecting the earth to the sky. The stars seemed to shine even brighter, and for a moment Mira felt as if they were shining back in answer. Thomas raised his scanner. "It's sending information into space," he said. "The chamber is communicating." Ria's eyes were wide with wonder. "And the stars are replying. Look." They all looked up. The constellations above the desert were changing. New stars appeared where there had been none. They arranged themselves into faint golden lines, matching the patterns drawn on the chamber's walls. It was as if the universe itself had opened its eyes. Mira felt a deep calm spread through her chest. "The reflection is complete," she said softly. "The chamber is showing that everything is connected." The lights continued through the night. The beams rose higher until they blended with the sky, turning the desert into a mirror of the stars. The air was warm and filled with a low musical tone. It was not just sound but feeling, a message of peace and unity that seemed to touch the heart directly. For hours they stood in silence, watching the sky. None of them spoke because words felt too small for what they saw. The chamber had reached across the distance of light and time, and the universe had answered. Humanity's reflection now shone among the stars, glowing faintly like a new constellation. When morning came, the golden glow faded. The desert returned to its quiet color of pale sand. The beams of light disappeared and the hum softened until it was barely a whisper. But something had changed. The sky held a faint golden shimmer even in daylight, a sign that the connection was still alive. Back in the camp, Mira opened her notebook. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrote. The chamber spoke to the stars and they replied. It was not a machine but a bridge of memory. "We are now written in the reflection of the universe." Thomas read over her shoulder and smiled. "It means we are part of their story now." Ria nodded. "And maybe they are part of ours." Bo looked toward the horizon. "If there are other chambers out there, they will see this. They will know that we are here." That night, the desert was calm again. The team sat together near the edge of the dig site. The stars shone bright above them, and the faint golden shimmer still lingered at the edge of sight. Mira listened to the quiet hum beneath the sand. It no longer felt distant. It felt familiar, like a voice she had always known but had forgotten how to hear. She spoke softly. Maybe this was their gift, to remind us that we belong to the universe, not apart from it. Ria smiled. "And that we are not alone." The wind carried their words away, and for a moment Mira thought she saw one of the stars blink brighter, as if nodding in agreement. The chamber beneath them was silent now, but its purpose was fulfilled. It had awakened, shared its memory, and opened the path between worlds. Before they went to sleep, Thomas looked at the golden mark glowing faintly in the sand and said, "This is how the universe remembers. Through light, through reflection, through life." Mira looked at him and then at the sky. "Then we must remember too. We are the reflection now." She lay awake for a long time, watching the stars through the open flap of her tent. They no longer seemed distant. Each one felt close, alive, and filled with quiet promise. Somewhere out there, other chambers might be shining in response. Other worlds might be listening to the same rhythm of gold and starlight. The hum beneath the desert faded slowly into silence. The chamber rested once more, its golden heart calm and steady. But it was no longer only a relic of the past. It had become a living link between humanity and the universe, between memory and light, and high above, the stars carried its message across the endless dark, a soft golden shimmer that would never fade. A reminder that even in the vast silence of space, someone was always listening.